G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today I'm revealing my AFL Fantasy team, going through what I've got in my team as of January 28. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Fired in the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, and joined, as always, by the Neefle legend himself, Luke Rogerson. How are you, mate?
It's team reveal time. It's
team reveal.
Hard to be bad on team reveal day.
Yes, so this is, we're going to be revealing on screen for those of you who are watching over on YouTube. And if you haven't watched over on YouTube and you're an audio listener, maybe this might be the episode where, let this run out and, give us the download. But
So listen to it twice.
Listen to it twice. Head over to the YouTube section. You'll be able to see some visuals along with the, with the team reveal here. But
we'll try to make it as podcast friendly as possible.
Yes, of course. But
I'm not going to go silent as we
give us the views, guys. But before we get started, give this one a big thumbs up because I am going out on a limb here and I'm revealing my secrets. So all you guys can go out there and just copy paste and win a hat off the back of this video, basically.
I wouldn't recommend copy pasting my team, but Mitch's might be all right.
Well, we're going to have my screen on the team my team on the screen
Yes.
here, but you're also going to, as we go along, let us know where you are different,
Yes.
and where you're wrong and I am right is essentially the vibe of the video.
Nice.
But keep in mind, this one is January 28th. We are recording this, so don't be holding me too much to this when it comes to round one. There might be some differences, but this is how I'm shaping up as of today. So let's get stuck into it.
Absolutely. Let's get across to the team.
Let's go to the... Oh, hold on a second.
Did you...
you left
hold on.
one,
You left one of your tabs open. We better just...
Let's just close that one.
Nip out of that.
Don't need anyone to see that tab there.
Ooh, what did you have up there, Mitch?
Let's keep that private, mate. That was before the podcast today. Anyway, sorry you guys had to see that over on YouTube. That was a bit embarrassing. But anyway, we'll move on.
Too much effort. We're so immature.
So immature. Throwback
Okay,
to...
bro, you got to drive. You got to get this team ready to go.
Let's get this team up and running because we're going to start...
It's still there.
It's still there. Close that tab. All right, we're going to start...
Is this showing the right thing to the people when you're in this?
Yeah. We're all over this, mate. We're professionals. Right. All right, starting in the defensive line. D1, I have...
Hayden Young. Let's go.
Hayden Young. No, I do not. I've got a guy who we did talk about in our Premium Defenders podcast as someone who I threw to you and asked you the question of, is this guy value? And I think he is at least a smidge of value in Tom Stewart, who is at D1 for me, 869,000. He had the injured game round 1 of last season.
Yeah.
Found his way to a mid-90 score, as he always seems to do. But after that game, he averaged 100 for the rest of the season. So I think he's a 100 averaging player, no early buy rounds. Small talk of him going into the midfield. I'll wait and see how that looks and if that's actually true. Whether or not that affects his scoring, I'm not too sure. But in those, I think it was 2 games where he had decent CBAs. He did score a couple of tons in those games as well. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but he is sitting there at D1 just as a safe, solid guy with a tiny bit of value.
First pick and you've broken your over 30s rule.
I know.
This doesn't bode well for this team.
Out with the old and in with the new.
In with the old and out with the new.
True, yeah. Out with the rules. Yes, so what is he 30
Just
on the dot?
turned 30, so you're going to make some excuse about how
Well,
it's
it's
30
over
on the dot.
30s.
Oh,
Over 30s,
30
mate.
in a day?
Well, no, just over, I don't know. I'm making it up as I go along. But Tom Stewart, at times I've had players like Sinclair
yep,
in this spot. Yep. I've also had my D2 as high as D1, so I've gone a bit cheaper at times. But as of right now, I do have Tom Stewart in there. I do like to have, a solid guy. And I do still think there is a little bit of value in there. They start with St Kilda round 1 this season, so you could probably, if he is playing defence, get a decent start to the year.
Yep.
And no early buy is another big thing here. So I want my premiums to have no early buy, especially in, those lines like the midfield and the defence where I think we've got a few good options. So how does that, is that I mean, should we go back and forward? Do you have Tom Stewart in your side?
Reveal your full defence.
All right, we'll do the full defence.
Yeah,
so Tommy Stewart's in there at D1. At D2, I do have the guy who I wrote a Deck of Dream Team article for, and that is Nazaya Wanganeen Miller in there. Like I said, at times he's featured as high as D1 for me as a bit of a cheaper option, but at the moment I do have him at D2. He improves throughout the season. He's going into his third season. The only player to average above 90 in his second year without CBAs, which is a pretty neat stat. And I just think he's a gun player. St Kilda have a decent run to start off. Again, no early bye. And I just think third year breakout, even though he's already broken out, I still think there's a little bit of upside. I think comes in price at around 90, 91. Yeah. I can see him going sort of mid to high 90s. So not heaps of value, but I think a little bit of skin on the bone.
Yeah, the article you wrote was good. If you haven't checked that out on Deck of DT, I thought your photos left a little to be desired compared to my article. But
your photos were right up there.
Well. Yeah.
I wonder how many people actually noticed your photos on the Deck of DT.
Go check.
If you haven't, go give it another closer inspection.
Check the LDU article out.
So he is at D2 with me, Nazaya Wanganeen Miller.
Weird not being able to see ourselves on the screen during that, because most of the time I just look at me.
You just look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
No, well, keep it in suspense, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Don't pull any stupid faces. The next guy in here like is my perma captain for the season, and that is the man himself, Hayden Young.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
I'm ready to get hurt again, and so are 30% of the competition, because he has soared up in ownership recently. I think for very good reason. He looks like he is confirmed to be an inside midfielder.
Of all, we always look for like what's coming out of the clubs. Of all the things coming out of clubs, this is like the most hard and fast.
Ironclad.
There's like happening. A 10-minute video where all he says is, "I'm going to play in the midfield."
I'm a midfielder. How many times do you say it? But yeah, I think we like players in the midfield.
How many points of upside do we realistically think are there?
I think there's as many as 15 points of upside. Okay. Probably more realistic about like 10. I think it's
in that
priced
line
at 89 or something like that right now. Hey,
yeah.
And that line that places him as someone who's in that top 6. Again, if we throw on the buy detector, again, no early buys so far.
You pay for premium, mate.
I pay up, mate. And the early buys, if you look at my defensive line, we've got 3 different players on 3 different buys.
God, you're good, mate.
And
how do you do it?
I'm just organised, mate. Just organised. Spend every waking hour just researching this shit.
Beads of sweat dripping.
And Hayden Young, that round 13, you've only got 2 teams in Port Adelaide and Freo on that round 13. Yep. So I think it is worth something to boost him up. So he's in at D3, as is his teammate in D4, Heath Chapman. There's been a bit of hype around this guy as well from the Freo camp as well. I think some people are saying to look out for him this year. Bit of wing, bit of half back. Obviously, Hayden Young moving up. He had his injury-affected season last year. So comes in very cheap, $594,000.
Just a good player too.
Good player.
A safe guy that is going to be in their team. They love him. And
I do think so, yeah. So I think his job security is good. His upside's there.
Sure.
In a positive team where it comes to chipping the ball around.
Yeah.
So I do like him there as that one. So still no early buy players until...
where are we going here? I think I know where we're going here.
To this guy here. Zachy Williams. Attack. Now, he's the first guy in here that I will have to navigate the buys around, but he's cheap enough that I don't think it's that much of an issue. I'm not giving up too much cash, and if I have to play a rookie instead of him, then I'm not. But as a price stat figure, I'm not going to give him up too much.
Is that selection in any way dependent on a round 0 score and roll?
Definitely. So this is one of those things that I'm going to be watching round 0, seeing what happens, seeing who scores there, as will this next pick be as well. So these final 2 defensive slots, my Nazaya Wanganeen Miller, Hayden Young, and Heath Chapman, I feel pretty confident in those 3. Tom Stewart's a bit more of a structure thing, whether or not he'll be in there. These last 2 spots are very much up for debate depending on that round 0 result. So I've got a few options to go through. And at D6, another round 0 player who's being slept on a little bit at this stage. We haven't talked about him yet because he's going to show up in our Rookie or Cash Cow podcast later on. But Marty Hoare from the Demons.
He's getting a run in the Oxlongs too. I looked at the name and I thought I want to bring a bit of promiscuity to the Oxlongs. So I thought, who better than the Hoare himself?
The Hoare and the Oxlongs.
So we do like to... We're a little flirtatious over at the Oxlongs, and I think Marty Hoare epitomises that. So
he does carry the name brand of the Oxlongs and proud.
Correct. He's actually, in my team, he's on the bench because he doesn't mind sitting on the wood. But
oh, dear.
That one wasn't crickets. That one was good. That was like audible laughter.
Mate, we're going to get cancelled.
We're going to get You got your tabs open. Have to.
Don't cancel us, please. We're good people.
We're good people.
But
people who have to say they're good people and not good people.
But he has the early buy round 6. But as I've described before, those really cheap guys, especially that round 6, I actually think
it's not an early buy.
I think it's a positive thing. I think it's a good thing because he's going to have 6 price movements in 5 rounds. So my early thinking is that he's going to be potentially one of my first upgrades if I can get him up to someone like maybe this little fella over here, Nick Dacos coming off his buy. That could be a potential play.
Well,
but Marty Hall is there.
Have to find some cash.
Now. I will have to find some cash. But I've played around with someone else like a Nick Caulfield in either one of those spots as well. And you'll notice that I don't have any actual rookies on my field in the defensive line. On the bench, I do have the first rookie there. And that is, where is he? What's his name? Curtin, that's his name. So he is in there, 279. So I'm paying up a little bit on my defense there for him. Some people might be rolling with him at their D6. I just don't know if I'm confident in his scoring ability. He's a bit of a key defender from what I'm told. He played a bit of midfield in the juniors, and so his numbers are a bit higher, but I don't think he's going to run the midfield at Adelaide.
I've got him in the Oxongs as well. My main question mark over him is does the curtain match the drapes? That's sort of...
when you make a joke and you've got nowhere to go after it.
Exactly. I don't think further forward than the joke, mate.
That's just where you stop there. But yeah, I mean, I think he's the type of guy that when these guys, Zach Williams and Marty Hall have their bye, he's going to be maybe the one that slips in there and covers them off, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So in my defensive line, when I've got some of those guys that do have the early buys, I'm happy paying up a little bit on the bench for that cover and also just to have a more secure scoring 6 back there. And then the last guy is a bit of a long shot. I don't really know too much about him, but from what I understand, he's a decent kick. Do you want to say that name?
Schoenmaker.
Yeah, Ari Schoenmaker.
Yeah, that's
it. There you
that's
go.
There's fucking another Schoenmaker.
Is there another? There you go. That shows my. I'm showing my footy knowledge here.
Showing your footy knowledge. Nice,
showing my footy knowledge. But he plays for the Saints and 19 years old. Just a bit of pedigree, and I think his scores in the VFL are pretty solid. A few other people are rolling with Pink there, I think.
I got Pinky just because that fucking luscious moustache in his photo.
That
Have you seen that
good.
thing?
But with a lot of these bench rookies in particular, they are... I mean, I've tried to think about who would actually be in my team, but as always, the disclaimer is they're placeholders.
Well, is this a good opportunity to talk about maybe considering not just putting all flat 200k rookies on your bench because you could be left very disappointed?
Yeah, I think this is what I do when I'm preparing it this far out from the start of the season, is because I'm not professing to know who the gun rookies are or who's going to be there round 1. It's as much of a crapshoot for me as it is for anyone else. So for now, I mean, Daniel Curtin being there on my bench, 79k. Say I need the cash, I can always go down, but it's much harder when you fall in love with your team to find that extra 50k.
A fucking good team too with all 200k.
And those rookies are very important to get right. So I think it is wise to have a bit of cash on your bench, so that if you need that at any point, you can access it then, or you don't have to find it at least when the team comes out. So how does this match up to your back 6?
Very similar in a lot of respects. The only difference I have is I am Mr. Vanilla. In comes Nick Dacos at D1.
Okay,
he hasn't trained with the Oxlocks until about 5 minutes ago before we started the podcast.
He's doing it.
Dacos at D1. Let's go.
You don't want to relive last season. Is that a lot of the motivation?
There's scars there. But this could be up in the air in 5 minutes' time as well. So I might even change it midway through the video.
Wow, okay. Just
loosey-goosey, mate.
Throwing all structure of the podcast out the window.
Correct. Other than that, we're pretty similar. I've just got the pink eye.
Pink instead of Schoenmaker. But yeah, okay, that's a bit of a thing there. So, okay. So you've got Dacos instead of Stewart. Yeah. Obviously paying up a little bit there, but... Again, this is back to how I'm sitting there.
And this is the thing too, we talk about this a little bit, is that because for the majority of the fantasy talk that we do is between us.
We're going to have a similar team.
We just end up in, what do they call it? amongst the community.
Echo chamber.
Yes, the echo
Yeah,
chamber is
yeah.
like we're bouncing ideas back and forth. You're saying, "Oh, fuck, that sounds good. I want to get on that."
yeah.
And then, on the very odd occasion where I say something good, you might think, "Oh, that's not a bad point." Luke."
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So
I think,
I should say my team ends up looking like your team.
my team, we'll see. My team does change on the daily regular. So
About a week out from the season, Mitch will just stop talking to me.
and then I'll just go quiet. And then, you guys
Code
can
of
stop
silence.
copying my teams. But yeah, that's how the defense looks here, guys. Before we move on to the midfield, just quickly, if you enjoy these podcasts and have been listening during the preseason, give this video a big thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed. We're still on the quest for Project 2K24,
Yes.
2,000 subscribers. We're getting
nice.
closer,
2K24.
up over the 1,600 last time I checked. So help us if you haven't already by subscribing. And if you are listening over on audio, give us a 5-star rating and review. We would much appreciate it. Trying to get to 100 reviews on Apple Podcasts. I
Where
think
are we at?
we're closing in on 70, I think,
Oh,
at the moment.
nice.
So
Thank you
another
also.
30 odd or more to go.
Thank you also to the people who are already subscribed and have been listening
Yes.
for a little bit as well. So
Legends, day oneers.
we have a heap of fun talking shit, and hopefully you guys, hopefully it starts some discussion as well. So
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it, very much appreciate it.
Let's head back over onto the team again here. So back
Close those
onto
tabs, mate.
the midfield. Tabs are closed. Don't worry about that. At M1, I do have $1 million player in my
Oof.
side. I've paid up a little bit here, and I've gone with
Your boy.
the Dawson, who, little breadcrumbs if you follow me on Twitter and actually, follow what I say. But I've mentioned a few times, I have, if I'm projecting right now, I think he's the number one midfielder
You got a
in the
little
game.
man crush on JD.
I think he's a gun.
With good reason.
I think he's an absolute gun.
Yeah,
And his early fixture in the season, I don't see any tags coming. Gold Coast, Geelong, Freo, Melbourne, Carlton, Essendon. I don't see many tags coming. And I think this guy's just got such a high floor. The team is looking to give him the ball. He's like their silky user. I have flirted with his teammate on Laddie as an option, but I feel a bit more comfortable with Jordan Dawson being that guy that has a higher floor and just being the player that they want the ball in his hands more. I think if I've got the cash, I'm going up to Dawson. I think he's a really safe captain option and a player that I think has a little bit of upside in his second year in the midfield.
Would you describe, how in your team during the preseason, there's always a guy that I would call the pivot point. So if you want to pivot the structure of your team, often it's this particular guy. Is that for you, Dawson? If you want to go with a slightly different structure, is he where you save
probably
cash?
is, yeah. In this midfield, when I go to review these other players, he's probably the guy that if the structure-wise becomes like a more of a mid-pricer type, he is the guy that often makes way for him because he's not value. Like, I'm not picking him for value.
Captain.
I'm picking him as a captain option. I do see a smidge of upside. I also think he's just a very safe, high floor player.
Yep.
And so I do like to start with at least one or two of those guys most seasons. Last year I started with Steele, didn't go so well. Yep. But even then, if things do go pear-shaped, you can eject and go down to anyone and make that move. So
that's true.
So he's at M1. At M2, it is my favourite player in the competition, and that is Andy Brayshaw.
Strong start, mate.
Strong start. So
I
guys.
can't see how you're going to lose.
Mate, I'm on fire here. So he is 996k, so just under that 1 mil. He's my other sort of captain option, you could say. And again, just like Hayden Young and Heath Chapman, that really nice buy around as a premium is a tick in his favour. And essentially, I got him in last year, the perfect time when he said he was over his knee injury. I think after that knee injury, he said he was fully fit.
Yeah.
I think it was the Brisbane Lion game. He averaged 115 from then on. So
He's served you well in the last few years.
very, very fond memories of Andrew Brayshaw in my team. So I'm going to start this year with him in there again. At M3, I have a guy that we are both big fans of, and that is Zachary Butters, who started the season slow last year, so didn't really move into the midfield full-time, I think, until round 4 or 5. And from there, he was basically 107, 108 averaging player.
Yeah.
Comes in priced at 100. So I think there's a little bit of upside there. He's still very young. He's, first time in the midfield, 60% CBAs last year. I can see that increasing. And again, same buy as those Freo players. So kind of loading up with that round 13 buy a lot with some of these premiums to start off with. But I do think all of them have upside. And I just think he's a bit of a gun. Starts the season out with some good matchups with the West Coast Eagles and the Richmond Tigers, two potentially bottom of the ladder teams.
Yeah.
So he could.
And even when Richmond aren't bottom of the ladder, they seem to give up points.
They give up points.
New
so.
coach, granted, but...
Yeah, so I think that he's going to be off to a hot start.
Yep.
And under 900k, I think he's a bit of a bargain. So he's been pretty locked into my side for most of the pre-season.
For sure.
The next guy here, some people might have a few scars as well, and this may be a bit of a theme for these next two players, and that is Jack Steele. You and I have talked about Jack Steele, obviously, in our premium podcast. We both think that last season was very much injury affected in terms of his average.
Yeah, when I jumped on with Bales to talk about Jack Steele, I very much was able to sell myself the narrative of why, and a lot of people talk about that is if you can look at scores and you can justify, okay, this is
build
why
a
I
narrative.
think you can build that narrative around it. If you look at it and go, fuck, I don't know why he went 80 or I don't know why he went whatever it was, it makes it then hard to see how you're going to come out the other side. But I could sell myself the narrative. And I think the other thing with these kind of picks is they're around a price where you can pivot in a fix-up instance. Like, let's say in those first few weeks where you have to fix up, well, it's not going to be too hard to pivot from Jack Steele to a guy that's popping or a mid-pricer that you really need to get on or whatever it is. I think you can go from there.
There really is usually a player around this price point, the Butters, the Jack Steele's price point, that really vaults themselves up in the competition. Last year it was Bont. Year before that it was Brayshaw. So far, touch wood, I'm 2 for 2 in starting those players. But this year I think these guys here, it can really benefit you starting a bunch of these players because they can pop into sort of captain level type scorers. And I think Jack Steele, obviously, we've seen it do it before. I'm not expecting 120, but I think there's a reasonable argument to say he can be 1 of 10 again this season. And then the next play here, I'm going pretty deep in my midfield in terms of what I would consider premiums. I do have LDU and another one of these guys.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
A lot of people have scars with LDU, and I've tweeted him out a few times, and some people, the most common response I get is, he burned me last season. I don't think I can do it again. What do you think about that in a response to a player like LDU? Is there legitimacy there?
When you have a player that has a bit of a sketchy injury history, I think there's always legitimacy when people say that. If it's a one-off thing where you get burnt and it's got nothing to do with some sort of recurring issue, then I think that's not the mindset you want to have. But I can definitely see why with a couple of these guys you think, oh man, there's just that little flag there. But I think from what I understand and what I've listened to and read about, it's these guys that you sort of have to pick. You have to pick the guy who's discounted for some particular reason.
They're
that you
cheap
think
for
is gonna
some
pop.
reason.
So they're cheap because they're injured. They're cheap because they were subs or whatever they were.
Or whatever. Yeah.
So you can't. I mean, it would be fucking easy if everyone could pick all the guys that played 22 games and
they were
fucking scored well.
So
I can see an argument for not having him, but I can also see an argument for why he could be one of those elite midfielders.
Do you think, and I've heard, shout out to the great man Selby in his latest podcast, he went through some player requests, and he talked about LDU being a better AFL player than a fantasy player.
Yep.
Do you think that argument is legitimate for someone like an LDU who, for example, in a Supercoach scoring format was one of the top guns in that level? Do you think that there's a bit of weight to that argument at all?
Yeah, I think there's a level of truth to it because what we value in fantasy is that guy who pigs it up a little bit, gets those +6s, pops on the outside, whereas a lot of what LDU does is explosive, break the lines, kick long, fancy footwork out of stoppage. He's really, really great player. But he has in reasonable patches shown that he can be a monster scorer as well. So I definitely agree with it, but it wouldn't shock me if LDU comes out and in 1 year and averages 110.
Yeah, and I will point to the fact that we kind of almost had that same kind of discussion with a player like Bont last year. Prior to last season, he was always that guy that's like always in the Brownlow medal, but he never really truly broke out from a fantasy point of view. But it doesn't mean that he wasn't capable of, and obviously we saw that last season. Should have won the Brownlow, went 117. Now I'm not saying LDU is going to do that, but I think that just because he hasn't in the past doesn't mean it's not possible. So I still am pretty big on LDU. So those are what I would call my 5 premiums in my midfield. I then start to get a bit cheaper here, and I have played around with another mid-price at this stage, but at the moment my team is looking like having 3 midfield rookies in Colby McKercher, Riley Sanders, and I do have Jeremy Sharp rounding out my midfield at M8. So I've got those 3 rookies there. I think McKercher and if Sanders plays round 1 are pretty much locks. There's talk about Sanders playing in the midfield, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bevo just says, Jack McRae, you're out. We're putting the kid in. And Colby McKercher off that half-back line. Could he be another example of a Harry Sheasel? Not expecting that, but
It's
with a ceiling.
Cushy role.
With a
It's a
ceiling
juicy
there,
role.
I think he's a must-have.
Yep.
And then Jeremy Sharp is a guy that, if he's named, I think I'm going to go there. He has a bit of a ceiling, and playing on the wing in Freo is not always a bad thing when they chip the ball around a fair bit. He's got a bit of experience. He is, 22 years old, so not quite that sort of teenage age where he's got a little bit of time in the system. So I think he can score decent enough to be at M8 for me.
Gold Coast to Freo. Could he do a Will Brodie?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's literal examples of that transition happening. So going on to my bench, I've got, again, just take these guys with a grain of salt. I've got Jai Clark sitting there from the Geelong Cats, and another player who seems to be getting a little bit of buzz at their club in Clay Hall as a 200k player. Jai Clark, fun fact.
Yes.
He
I
had
imagine this will be fun.
the highest points per minute out of any player last season.
What, in the AFL?
In the AFL. He played one
many?
game and he played like 30%, but of any player, he had the highest points per game, higher than Grundy.
Was it higher than X-Area after his first game? Surely not.
Not after the first game, but after he came in, he kind of put a bit of damage into that.
Do you remember what it was?
It's like 1.16 or something like that. Now,
wow.
obviously, that's not going to carry through, but...
That should translate.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
how data works, isn't it?
But it just goes to show, so highest, he was 0.02 higher than Rowan Marshall, who was the second highest.
What a fun fact.
They're very fun facts. So he could score. He was like a top 10 pick, I want to say. And Geelong, who knows what they're going to do. But if he's there, I think he makes my team.
There was one game I played of footy where I was fucking on fire in the first quarter. My points per minute would have been through the roof.
Yeah, should just timed it there and say, I'm going to rest on that.
2 touches for the next 3 quarters.
Oh, no.
Touched it twice.
Yeah. So, look, he's not going to go on average 116, but it is like when you're 237k, you play one game, you got to hold on to something. Give me this one stat, Luke.
No, I like it, yeah. I like
so
it.
he's there.
That's good digging, mate. It's good digging.
And if he is playing around one, I do like his chances to make my team. How's that compared to your midfield?
Look, so I don't have the might of Jordan Dawson at M1, so I dropped down to Brayshaw as my M1 at the moment, and my justification there is similar to yours in the sense that he has that round, is it the round 13 bye?
Yep.
Which when you look at those top midfielders and you think, okay, well, which ones don't have the first lot of buys? And then probably tipping point for me is that he has the round 13.
Yep.
And then very similar to you in sense of Butters, Steele, LDU.
Yep.
But then I get a little bit spicy and I kind of hate myself
No,
having this guy
yourself.
in my team. But I have Carl Amon in
Yes.
there. This is...
I've played around with him in the squad.
For a guy that's literally said, I'd like to be vanilla, and then I pick Carl Amon at M5. But look, take the whole thing with a fucking grain of salt because I could walk out of here and change the whole team. So then for me, I've actually got Dylan Stephens in there as sort of like a mid-ish price guy.
I do like Dylan
the
Stephens.
The Sydney thing does it for me a little bit. I love the culture that Sydney has, and I love to think that guys who are good footballers that are just on the outer of Sydney can go to other clubs and be really solid. So for me, that'll be a really close watch in the preseason. I feel like North Melbourne traded for him, so they got him in. Maybe he has a role there. But again, that one's one to watch. And then for the rest of the picks, they pretty much kind of round out.
And you have Sharp sitting on your bench, is that correct?
Yeah, Sharp and Clark on the bench.
So you've got a bit of cash in there, which is obviously sometimes a good thing. Want to know a fun thing about Dylan Stephens? I'm full of fun facts today.
Tell me.
Second in their time trial, in their 2K time trial.
That bodes well. You need to be able to run these days.
Jai Simpkin first, Dylan Stephens very close second. So
you go to a club and you set the tone like that, it's hard not to put you in a decent
throwback to Timmy Taranto last year, came into Richmond and won their time trial as well. Now,
see, I'm going, buddy, back and forth more than a catfish and a moon bounce because I said I want my team to be vanilla, but then Carl Amon and even Dylan Stephens is probably lowly owned too. Yep. So there's a definite scenario where those two picks change.
Yeah, I do like experimenting with a structure where you've only got 2 rookie midfielders in there. I have played around with having Jeremy Sharp on my bench as well. Sometimes it's a Dylan Stephens, sometimes it's a Carl Amon, sometimes it's also a George Wardlaw for me. Okay. Some of the players that I'm playing around with, but it often depends on what I'm doing in other lines and where I can cut corners. So that's how your midfield is shaping up. I will just switch that back so we can keep my team in there. Is that sort of a structure that you've played around with having the 3 rookies on your field, or
not as yet? I feel like there's some sort of safety there, in I feel solid on McKercher and Sanders, but I guess that last midfield position, you can rotate between those 3 rookie bench options on any given week. You can also have a bit of Lupe Fiasco stuff going on there if you're getting a bit fancy. But at this stage, it's been pretty solid on the 2 rookie options in the midfield. But
quick buy check for my team. No one in the midfield has an early buy, which has been my rule. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. The other buys, I've got, a bit of a double up, but I'm pretty happy having 2 players on the same buy on any given thing. So a couple of round 15s, a couple of round 13s. I'm not too stressed about that.
So a nice, colourful team, mate.
Very colourful. All right, let's move on to the rucks. Now, this has changed for me recently. I did always, well, not always, but recently I've moved to this player, Maxi Gawn. If you check out our Ruck podcast, which has just recently come out, we talked about him being a potential captain option for you early in the season. Price at 92, I think he can go 110 plus. We saw him do that once Grundy left the back half of last season. First time having no, backup ruckman essentially in the last 3 or 4 seasons. So again, I'm breaking my over 30s rule, but I think Max I can make a pretty comfortable exception because he is just a gun and he's a ruckman and they defy age compared to normal other positions.
He's an absolute beast. I can't argue with it, hey?
Yeah, so he's in there at R1 and R2. This used to be a different player, but after he broke his face, I did move Tristan Xerri to Brodie Grundy. I've been trying, I don't know if it's stubbornness or, I don't know, maybe I should, check myself on this, but I've been trying to avoid having Grundy in there. Something just doesn't feel... I don't know.
What is it? Try and tell us.
I don't know. Maybe it's just what I saw the last time he was at Collingwood in that 2022 season. That
it's only 5 games.
The eye test he didn't pass the eye test to me last time I saw him as a sole ruck.
This guy's going to have a fucking huge chip on his shoulder.
Massive, yeah. And look, he's in my team right now, and you're going to have to get a look at him in round 0. They obviously play each other. So, again, this might be determined on what happens in that round 0. I do have the option of going Grundy down to someone like a Tristan Xerri. But for me, I'm deciding between Grundy and Xerri, not Gawn and Xerri, which I know some people are.
So you've got Gawn locked in. So what does, let's say, Xerri gets his new face all sorted and he plays in a practice game and he's the number 1 ruck and he does what we expected him to do. Let's call it 95, whatever it is. Rolls good. Are you more inclined to...
I had Tristan Xerri as my first pick player of the season. So if he ticks all those boxes and he's back to looking like I thought he would look, then I think I would do that because I avoid having the 2 ruckmen on the early buy. So again, we toggle this on. We've got 2 guys missing a game in the first 6 rounds. In the ruck department, that's especially troubling because
can't replace them.
Chances are you're not going to be able to replace them with a playing R3, unless we do get one. But even then, how confident are we going to be that they're going to be there in round 5 and 6? So you're essentially going from 22 to 21 players. So instead of dropping 4 scores off, you're now only dropping 3 scores off. So for me, if Tristan Xerri ticks all those boxes, I would rather have him than Grundy just because of that fact. And I think he's similar, if not better value. He's cheaper. So it might let me do other things in my other lines.
You made a good point on the previous podcast as well in terms of like the people who are debating Max Gawn and Grundy. Even if we get... let's call it 25 points of upside from both of them. If you get your 25 points of upside from Grundy, he's maybe not in that R1, R2 discussion.
95, 100.
So even though you got that upside, if you get that same upside from Max, you're getting a keeper as well.
He's locked in your team. He's basically that essentially equivalent of R2 value. You don't have to trade him, whereas you still want to get Grundy up to one of those big dogs. You're still going to want to get into Tim English, whereas Gawn, the difference might not be as much, and you might be happy to keep him for longer.
Yeah.
So yes,
you certainly talked me into it last podcast. So
so is that how you're sitting at the moment with your rucks?
So I've got Gawn and Grundy there, but I've been a little bit creative, a little bit of out of the box thinking. I needed a little bit of extra cash, so I'm actually not going to play an R3 this year. I'm actually just penciling up an email to Warney, just saying, hey mate, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to not play an R3. Need a bit of extra cash on field. And that's the plan. So,
let me know how it goes, because I might, if that goes through for you, I might follow through.
I mean, some would call it cheating. I'm probably more inclined to call it out of the box thinking. If Warney replies,
I mean, really, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage having one fewer players.
Exactly, one fewer players. So
everyone else a leg up.
I think that's what I'm doing. That's why I see it anyway. So at this stage, no R3 for the Oxlongs.
I'm going to throw a bone to Max Heath there, who was very kind to me last year. Had the captaincy badge a lot, so I'm going to send him back out there and see if he can back it up again. The ruck forward status does help. And,
in all seriousness, for those people that are in an uproar, if if I had to, I could take like Dacos to Sinclair. And
Yeah, you can make a bit of
put
cash
Max
there.
Heath in there.
Yes, so...
But first plan is emailing Warnie to see if I can drop that position off.
Let's get to the dreaded forward line. Now, I do think that this may change many times between now and the start of the season, but at the moment, I do have the head tilt himself, Jack McRae, starting at F1. I don't love it. No early buy is a big reason for why he's there. I want to see how the mix turns out with the Bulldogs. If I didn't have the Grundy-Gawn combo, I might be more inclined to go with a different way and have maybe another player that has the early buy, but because I'm already starting a couple of guys there that I want to hold through, I do want to limit my early buy round players. And Jack McRae, even if he just kind of treads water where he is, he's more than likely there or thereabouts in the top 6 forwards.
This is so...
But I don't love it.
Oh, that's the thing. Like, he's been in with the Oxons as well. Currently not. But it's... If you're having to make this face while you're justifying a pick, like, you feel dirty about it.
No, you don't feel good.
I think... I mean, I've never experienced good Jack McRae. So,
No.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's people out there who are, you know, like, fucking 120s. Like, let's go, let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
And all I've seen is, you know, perpendicular head to his body. Like, so it just... As much as I can definitely see the logic in it, and I think I'll do it because he's going to be so vanilla.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I'll just do it, cover off, start with a vanilla team. But yeah, like I said, when you're making this face...
Yeah, it doesn't fill you with confidence. So they're very open to moving him around, and it will depend on who puts their hand up in the preseason. But at the moment, he does sit there at F2. This is where I start to get a little bit spicy.
Okay.
And I've got my boy here, Connor McDonald, sitting there at F2.
It dies off.
638k, so we
off.
jumped down 200k.
Talk to me about no Flanders.
No Flanders.
Bales has given you enough info about that early moist buy.
This is where I might
moist
the
fixture.
run. Yeah,
Yes, the run.
This is where I would have Flanders there if I didn't have the Grundy-Gawn combo. And look, he misses round 3, so it's a bit different to those round 5 and 6 guys where it's just early in the season enough that like you're still going to be jumping on these mid prices. I want to focus on getting those guys, those must-haves early in the season. I don't want to be having to either trade him out or, you know, just cop that early on.
Yeah, premiums on the early buy.
And I don't think his price is going to escape me too much. Again, it will depend on what happens in round 0 and the role and everything, how it looks and how entrenched in the midfield he is. Like, there are other players in the midfield as well. You've got Rao, you've got Took, you've got Anderson.
Yeah.
You've got players like Swallow and the Humper going in there. Like, he might not be that guy that's just guaranteed every week to be 100. If he puts up a couple of 90s start the year, that's not necessarily disappointing, but in terms of I'll get him at a similar price after his buy. So
yeah, I can see that.
We'll see how we go. But at the moment, I'm fading him. Connor McDonald is there. It's kind of a placeholder. I've talked about how I think he's going to be a bit more of a wing, maybe some inside time. It's third-year breakout. This is the kind of player I'm looking for. But again, we're sort of waiting and seeing there. The next guy here in my squad, as I bring back up my list, I've completely forgotten. It is the
fish.
The fish himself. He's hooked me in, and I've got him in there. 623k. Hamstring awareness hasn't scared me off yet.
We all know awareness is worse than an actual injury.
You think that. I'm not of the same opinion. But again, if he plays a preseason game and he plays the role that I expect him to play off that half back.
What if he's still aware of his hamstrings after a preseason game?
Well, then that's not good. If he's still aware of those hamstrings and there is some reporting up there, then I might fade him. But I do think that if he's in that role is conducive to scoring. And I think I'm pretty confident him going 85 plus in that role. So price at about, 70 odd. I think that's good value. Next player here.
You haven't had James Jordan the whole preseason. The Swans social media team convinced you?
He's been there recently.
Okay.
I feel better about having him than his teammate Ian Taylor Adams just because he's cheaper.
Yeah.
And I'm not feeling locked into having him in my side after his bye. Like, he might be a guy like a Marty Hoare earlier that come his round 5 bye, that if he's not doing what I want him to do or he's made his cash and there's another option, maybe a Flanders or something like that, I feel like I don't mind trading him out at his buy. I don't feel the pressure to keep him in there. Under 500k. I just think he's got a bit to prove, and he's done 70s in the past. He's still young. So yeah, I think James Jordan can at least do well whilst Callum Mills is out of the side to start the year. So he sits there at the moment there, and yeah, the price is good. He's very cheap.
Do you want to talk about your decision to not go with Adams? Because he's reasonably highly owned, 25%.
Reasonably highly owned. Look, he's in consideration. Again, having the Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn in there. If I have Brodie Grundy and a Taylor Adams, I'm missing 2 players that are premiums in that round 5.
Yeah, and then if you add James Jordan.
And if I add James Jordan in there, and if he does pop off and I do want to keep him, I'm putting myself in a tricky position at that point. So I've decided to fade Taylor Adams. I think Grundy and Jordan present higher points per game upside. And Taylor Adams, we've discussed in our Forward Premium podcast that to be like that 95, 100 type, I think he needs like 75, 80% CBAs. And I don't know if I see that in Sydney's midfield. You've got the likes of Errol Goulden, Chad Warner. Yeah. You've still got Luke Parker in there. You've got Rowbottom running through there. Yeah. You've got James Jordan. There's still a number of guys running through there. So
Papley likes to get in there.
Papley gets involved. So I see him improving, but not by much. And he's an injury risk. He's older. There's just a few too many flags for me at this stage.
Okay.
But still a watch. Now we get into some cheaper players. I do have another McRae, so double McRae's, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But Finlay McRae in there at 310,000. Another points per minute beast, just like Jai Clark. I think he was up there as well. Taylor Adams leaving gives him at least a window. I think he'll
get some good opportunity this year. Whether it's exactly what we want, I'm not sure. But I think by all reports, the coach quite likes him too. Yeah,
another guy with an early buy, but again, at that rookie price, that again, it'll depend on his round 0 score, whether or not he features in. And then a guy who's pretty much a lock. I spelled his name wrong.
Harley.
How do I spell his name? Harley Reid. Why am I struggling to find him? Anyway, Reid. I've got in there Harley Reid, 300k. So that gives me a total of 4 rookies, 5 rookie-priced players in my squad at the moment. I do think that of all the actual rookies this season, those 3 that I have are pretty solid in terms of their job security.
Yeah.
And if the reports are true that Reid is playing a bit off half back, very nice scoring potential there, I see. So pretty happy to have him in there. On the bench, this guy's a bit of a placeholder at the moment, Zane Dersma. I don't really see myself starting with him, but again, I'm just trying to store a bit of cash on the bench there, and I do think he gets a game early, but being a half forward for North Melbourne might not be the best. I've got Sean, do you know how to pronounce that name? Sean Manor. Sean Manor there. He's a mature age player.
Sean Manor. Sounds like a big house in the country.
Yeah, it does. So he's a mature age guy for Geelong. They usually like to throw some of those guys in there. And then in my utility, I've got my boy who I traded in last season and he did nothing for me. He's not a forward. That's why it's not coming up. But Jackson Binns rounds out the squad there.
The Ibis.
At the utility spot with 43k left over. So I do have a bit of room to get a slightly more expensive rookie in there. But that's how the team is shaping up. How does that forward line and utility spot compare to your team?
It's almost identical except for the F1, or it is identical except for the F1. So Flanders versus McRae. And the same thing you said about McRae is what I'm doing with Flanders is I want to have a look.
Yeah. There's
the high ownership percentage. Like I said, there's every chance that McRae ends up starting at the Oxongs, even if I don't particularly like it. Flanders, like you mentioned before, will be difficult not to pick if he gives you a 120 in a great role in round 0. But it almost works perfectly if he gives you like a 90 and a half decent role in round 0, because then you can get on after round 3 unless he gives you like a 180 in round 1 or 2. You know what I mean? Like you can probably get on later for not much extra.
Yep.
But yeah, that's me at the minute. Mostly the same rookies.
Yeah. So Flanders instead of McRae, rookies similar. It looks like you've got Chrissy Burgess there, key position player. I think he'll be playing, but again, we're waiting on the rookies for the most part. So I think of all the lines, the forward line and probably the ruck line are probably the most changeable for me, depending on preseason games and round 0 games. So they are very much open to changing. And then if I need the cash to make those changes, some of those linchpins like a Jordan Dawson, like a Tom Stewart, might make way to cheaper options if I need extra cash to make it work. So those are kind of, I guess, the overall things that I'm thinking about with my squad. So lots can change between now and then. We'll see if Tristan Xerri has a face between now and then, or if he's still rocking the cone. We'll have to wait and see. So that's it for the team reveal. Let us know down in the comments section below. What do you think? You think I'm an idiot for fading Nick Dacos again? Am I onto something with some of these lack of early round buys? What do you think down in the comment section below? Are there picks you like, picks you didn't like? And let us know how your team is shaping up if you're watching over on YouTube. And we've got lots more in store for this preseason. A few guests coming on.
Ooh.
A couple of pods and anti-pods as well that we're going to be discussing soon. So keep tuning in, guys, and we will see you guys next time. Laters, boy. Sorry.
Wow. Gotta wipe it.
Bye.